This video is sponsored by MPV. We're gonna have some nerdy fun today. You know I love a tiny camera for travel and street photography and everyday carry, but what about the landscape photographers amongst us? I want to know if I can get a tiny-ish setup that is weather sealed and rugged and ready to rock for all of those harsher conditions. First of all, we will discuss a weather sealed camera body for all budgets, and then a weather sealed stock lens. Then I think it's okay to add in some non-weather sealed items to have a little bit of versatility for when the weather isn't too bad. All the prices in this video are estimates and current to the date that I'm filming, so just keep that in mind, things will fluctuate over time. So the first budget option, a camera body under £300. My first pick is the Lumix G80. This is much smaller than the likes of the GH6, which is a little bit massive, but it is weather sealed and it has a lot of great features for the price. This is the camera that my dad had when we recently went to the Faroe Islands together, and his photographs were stunning. When I sort of edited them for the photo book, I honestly couldn't tell the difference very often between the GH6 output and the G80, so it is really high quality for the price. On top of the weather sealing, we have an EVF, we have a flippy screen, and we even have an audio input for video. I also like that while it isn't sort of flat design like the EM5 or the G100, it does have a really rugged grip, and sometimes you need that when you're out and about hiking. The Lumix G80 is currently £290 used. I think that is not even a bargain, that is a steal for the price. Next, Old Faithful, the Olympus EM5 Mark 1 or Mark 2. You can actually get the Mark II for a very similar price to the Mark 1, so keep an eye out for some bargains at the moment. This is a completely weather sealed magnesium alloy, super duper rugged tiny camera. During my dedicated review, I had a few people mention that weather sealing does deteriorate over time. Do keep in mind, depending on which copy you buy, if you buy it used, the weather sealing may not be 100%, but it's certainly better than getting one that isn't weather sealed at all. So the EM5 Mark 1 is super under budget at around £210 body only used, and the EM5 Mark II is ever so slightly over budget at around £320 used. So I'm going to split it down the middle and still class it as under 300 quid. Now this form factor might appeal to a lot of people because it is small, it is very, very portable and even pocketable depending on the type of lenses that you put on it. I personally love the build quality of this camera. I think it really does stand the test of time, and it is a great option for weather sealed landscape photographers who don't want to carry a shed load of stuff on their back. So let's move on to cameras under £500 for landscape photography. The first camera is the Lumix G90, the model up from the G80. Form factor wise, they look very, very similar, but we do have a couple of noticeable upgrades. These are currently used for around £490, so it's just in my budget, but you do get a lot of spec for that price. This is one of the more newer cameras on the list. It came out in 2019, so the weather sealing will be tip top even if you buy it used. And over the G80, we have live composite mode, which can be really handy for star trails and things, especially for landscape photography. We also have an upgrade in the sensor. We have the newer 20 megapixel sensor versus the 16, and we have a really more robust video feature. So if you're looking for more of a hybrid setup to get some video clips while you are shooting landscape, the G90 is a great option. I would say if any of these newer features appeal to you, then spring for the G90. If you're not too fussed about the video features, the G80 is super, super ridiculously priced at the moment. Another tiny, delightful camera in the under £500 bracket is the Lumix GX8. This is a bewilderingly low price for this camera. It is a very nice tiny form factor. It's not quite as small as the EM5, but it's certainly more slimlined and definitely more slimlined in the Lumix lineup. You can currently get these for around £380 used, and you do have a lot of the same specs as the G80. So we have IBIS, weather sealing, and we have a really good EVF, and we do have the newer 20 megapixel sensor in this one, quite like the G90. So it's kind of like if the G90 and the G80 had a teeny tiny stylish baby, you would get the GX8. Also small enough to have as an everyday carry or a walkabout camera as well, and one that I may be reviewing soon on this channel if enough people fancy it in the comments. So let's get on to the big numbers. We have a camera body budget of up to but under £700. What can we get for that? It may come as no surprise to say that my first recommendation is the delightful photocentric flagship, the Lumix G9. The G9 is currently going for around £590 used, so seriously well under your £700 budget. It's weather sealed, it's got all of the photocentric features that you would want, but it also has really robust video features as well. But controversially, even though the G9 is a beaut, absolutely a beaut, there is a lot of overlap with the very misunderstood and overlooked G90. You have the same sensor, the G90 is lighter, and it's also a good chunk cheaper as well. So definitely weigh up the pros and cons to both if you're looking for a G9. The G9 is super impressive though, I don't want to downplay that. It's the most weather sealed camera on this list, if that's even a thing. You even have freeze proof down to -10 Celsius. It is rugged. It is designed to last and just be absolutely fine in basically any conditions that you throw at it. The G9 has a lot more advanced autofocus features like animal detect and face detect, sort of things like that. Even though it is contrast based, it is pretty good in burst mode. And speaking of burst mode, it also has the fastest burst mode of any camera that I'm mentioning today. So if you are doing a little bit of wildlife photography when you're out and about, the G9 definitely ticks both boxes. Now, of course, I have to say, the G9 is not really small. I'm really stretching things here to put this in the tiny camera lineup, but the specs really do shine, and if you pair it with some smaller lenses, it's still much smaller than a lot of full frame counterparts. The next option is the Olympus EM5 Mark III. So it's the two models above this one and one model below this one. But it looks exactly the same as both of them, so it's absolutely fine that it's not actually on this table. The EM5 Mark III is the first camera in this video to have phase detect autofocus. So as good as the G9 is, I think the EM5 Mark III will be a step up again. Just a reminder, we are talking about landscape photography here, and the mountains don't move that quick. But if you are looking to have something that will work as an everyday carry camera, landscape and wildlife, then having phase detect autofocus is certainly helpful. That camera is a little bit spenny though. It's a little bit, it's right up to the budget of my border, which is £700 used currently. So those are my choices for my tiny, weather-sealed, joyful cameras at any budget. Let's see what lenses we compare them with. We get to start this section with a very attractive lens and a very attractive price. Under £200, the Olympus 12-50. Now it is a 3.5 to 6.3, and it is an older lens. It is in fact the first weather-sealed lens ever made on the Micro Four Thirds system. So it has a very special place in my heart, but it is getting on a bit now. 12-50 gives you 24 to 100 millimeters. Now imagine what that would look like in a full frame. I'm going to show you what that'll look like in a full frame. So this is a 24 to 105 full frame lens. And it's, you know, heavy as all hell and massive. This is the Micro Four Thirds equivalent. Absolutely teeny, tiny, joyful. This lens is only 210 grams, so you'll hardly even feel it on the camera, and it is slimmer and smaller than a lot of lenses. Even sort of the Lumix lenses are a little bit chonky, whereas this one's nice and slim. Now, it is one of the slower lenses on this list, as you'd expect for the price, but we're thinking about landscape photography here, so sometimes you're going to want to stop down anywhere. You're going to want everything sharp and in focus, so I think slower lenses are not too bad for this specific type of photography. Next up, we have the Lumix 12-60 3.5 to 5.6. This was the lens that my dad had in the Faroe Islands, glued to his G80 until we went on a speedboat and cracked it and destroyed the lens. Up until that point, it was very rugged. And the images are pin sharp, it is weather sealed, it survived the water of the speedboat, just not the blunt force trauma of the speedboat handle. You can get the Lumix lens for £190 used, and interestingly, even though it is wider than the Olympus, they're both 210 grams, which is absolutely tiny by anyone's standards. Our next category is below £450, and we have two options here. We have the Lumix 12-35 f2.8 constant, and we have the Lumix Leica 12-60 f2 to f4. Now this, spoiler, is my favourite stock lens of all of the Micro Four Thirds lineups that I've ever used, and I've used quite a lot. I think it's the perfect mix between speed, size, and also image quality. I was astounded to realise that these Leica branded lenses are so cheap. If I was to choose between these two, I would choose the 12 to 60 for the versatility. However, the 12 to 35 has done me proud over the years. I've got astrophotography with it. It's absolutely tiny and it works brilliantly. And both of these are of course weather sealed. The 12 to 35 f2.8 Mark 1 is going for about 380 quid. And the Lumix Leica 12 to 60 is going for around 440. So just under my £450 budget, but in my opinion, worth every penny. Over the years, I can definitely attest to both of these being perfectly weather sealed because we've been out in some storms. Yes, we have. And they've both done absolutely fine. Now, let's talk about some weather sealed lens options over £450. For the sake of balance, let's look at the Olympus lineup. We have two Pro f4 options here. We have the 8-25 f4 constant, which is absolutely delightful. I've got some great images of this so far. It's a nice metal build quality and you do have a focus clutch with it as well. Oh, there you go. So you can have really nice manual focus or let the camera do it for you. These are not small by any stretch of the imagination. Comparing it to the first one that we talked about, our budget baby, these are bloody massive. But I will say, if weight and size is not too much of a factor, or perhaps you're pairing it with a nice small body to sort of counteract the fact that it's massive, they're really, really cool. Interestingly though, I've had a good old play with this 8-25 recently because I've been reviewing the OM5, which is a delight of a camera. And I think the Lumix Leica 12 to 60 is as good in terms of image quality as these lot. They should either be more expensive or these should be a bit cheaper. Probably these should be more expensive. Now, if any of these things have caught your eye so far, you must check out MPB. They are the world's largest online platform for buying and selling and trading your used camera equipment. I have cross-checked some other places to get an accurate representation of the prices that I'm saying in this video. And 9 times out of 10, MPB have the most attractive price. They're really, really competitive, and you get a 6-month warranty with anything that you buy from them. If you are bargain hunting as well, and I feel like if you're watching this and enjoying this video, you will enjoy a bargain hunt. You can find things really, really well priced with certain things missing. So maybe you get a lens that's in pristine condition, but it doesn't have a box. Or you get an EM5 Mark 1 that didn't have an eye cup. I got this at a stupid price just because that was missing and it didn't have a box. That's fine, sign me up for that. MPB have been a long-term supporter of this channel and I really do rate them and use them personally myself, and I'll only recommend things that I use and love. So check them out in the description below and grab yourself a bargain, as I do much too regularly, clearly. So let's move on to some fun, versatile, tiny lenses. Now these are not weather sealed, but sometimes when you're out shooting landscape photography, it's not always raining. Sometimes you need a wide angle lens, sometimes you need a zoom, sometimes you need a macro, and we've got a plethora of tiny options to add some versatility to this kit. There is a teeny tiny macro lens under £200, and that is the Lumix 30mm f2.8. It's not sort of just macro capabilities, it's a proper macro lens, and the price is stunning for that because macro lenses tend to be quite expensive usually. Controversially, I'm quite fond of a fisheye lens. When you're shooting landscape photography with a fisheye, you may want to defish it a little bit and get rid of a little bit of barrel distortion, but I really like the exaggerated effects you can get with a fisheye. You can get really close to rocks and still see things in the background, and this little 7 Artisans 7.5mm f2.8 fisheye is well under £200, and it's even great for astrophotography. It is quite heavy though. It is very small, but it is quite heavy. But for the price, it's certainly a contender. No landscape photography list of mine would be complete without mentioning this delightful baby. The Olympus 8-18 ultra wide rectilinear lens of joy. Plastic fantastic, and it's also pancakey, so it will extend as you use it. So that's it open, but then we do get it nice and compact when it's nice and closed. And sometimes wide angle lenses can be bloody massive. Note, like the 8-25, massive. 8-18, teeny. So having something smaller is always great, and it is really, really, really light. That lens is super duper sharp, and it's funny because the build quality, it feels cack. It feels like one of the worst lenses on this table, but it still holds its value because anyone who's ever used it knows that the image quality is brilliant, and that's all that matters. And also in this category, we have my recently reviewed, so small I've lost it on the table, 35 to 100. This is dinky, as you may have seen in a recent video of mine. I took it to the Faroe Islands. It's my just in case, lob it in your bag kind of lens. It was pristine when I came on that trip, and now I've got scratches all over it, but it's been well loved. I love this lens. The images are fantastic. If you want something a little bit faster, we do have the Lumix 2.8, and that's internal focusing, so it is a bit bigger, but that's as big as it gets. They're both stabilized. This is not weather sealed, this is weather sealed. This is faster, this is lighter. Pick your poison. They're both pretty good. And then finally, my category that I'm calling nicey but pricey. I can't help but recommend the Lauer 6mm f2, and it's certainly blooming tiny. It is rectilinear as well, so we don't have to defish things like we would with the 7 Artisans, and also it's significantly lighter than the 7 Artisans, even though they are about the same size. I've not used it for landscape much yet, but I have used it for street photography and I love it, and it's tiny. It is pricey, but it certainly is nicey. You've got an option for most budgets here, and if the overall sort of size and weight of your camera package is important to you, then these are some of the very best options that you can get for the money. It is Emily from the very near future, since that was recorded. I realised that this video is going out after the G9 Mark II embargo. And I would be very remiss if I didn't mention that the G9 Mark II is the absolute one to beat for landscape photography. It is dust, splash, freeze resistant, rugged, burst modes, phase detect autofocus, all the things you could want, cracking video features, amazing photography features, real-time LUT. It's got everything that you could need. And honestly, if money were no object, I would buy the G9 Mark II with the 12 to 60 and then go travel the world and take the best landscape photography photos ever. Watch my full review on the Lumix G9 Mark II if you haven't already to learn more about this beautiful new Micro Four Thirds camera. It's a little bit spenny for this sort of budget video, but I had to mention it because it is perfect. Okay, as you were.